this is Mike Simpson, Superintendent of Guthrie Public Schools, and today on Shock Talk, we've got a couple of guests that we've tried to do this once a year, bring in and do this kind of around the playoff time, bring in Chris Evans, who is with Guthrie News Page, but also the voice of the Blue Jays and also the coordinator for the NFHS network for the OSSAA, and then my good friend Shea Iven, the media relations director for OSSAA. Bring those guys in, and I'm glad to have you guys with us. Appreciate you joining us.
Appreciate it, Dr. Simpson. It's always fun. I've always enjoyed Guthrie, and I know I say stuff on here, and I'm in Guthrie, and it always sounds like I'm brown-nosing a little bit, but I mean, it goes back to American Legion baseball days. When I grew up, I played American Legion baseball in Enid. I was from Pond Creek, but coming to Guthrie was always one of my favorite places to come, with Coach Reed when he was coaching the American Legion team, and Coach Chappell was helping with it, and we had some great times in Guthrie. I always enjoy coming here.
Well, you know, that's I'm in year 12, I guess, of being superintendent, and my family loves it here as well. It's you know, Stillwater was where my wife and I both grew up, but this feels more like home now, and we enjoy it too. And I know we're talking about Chris's hometown. Chris, kind of, assuming that not everyone knows who you are, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you do and all the things that you've done, both in your sports career and then also in your broadcasting.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. It's always good to have Shea in Guthrie. It's so cool. We need to do this every year, to have Shea in downtown Guthrie. It's so cool to have him here. I grew up in Guthrie, born here, did everything Guthrie. I got married, have kids here. And I remember walking the halls of Guthrie High School, took a journalism class with Miss Patterson, my favorite teacher of all time, and we got to do some cool stuff with the newspaper and kind of involved into what I do now. And it's been really a roller coaster of a career, not knowing where I'm, of the things I get to do, the cool things I get to do year in, year out. And I owe all that to Guthrie. That's where I got my start. It's where I continue to do that. But it has allowed me to go above and do other stuff across the state. And all that is because of Guthrie, teachers, administrators around me growing up. I was friends with Coach Chappell. I mean, he was my coach, but we were friends. We worked on the field together all the time. All the athletic directors and all the teachers I hung out with as friends. They were my teachers, but they're also my friends away from school. And so, and then, you know, with the radio career, moved up to streaming career, and then a good team put together, and now we get to do some cool stuff around the state in all sports. So.
Well, you skipped something in the middle of all that. I don't know if you want to deny that part of your life happened or not, but you were a fair to middle-of-the-road umpire, too,
yes,
before you got into this broadcasting gig.
Yeah, that's right. I remember Coach Chappell said, hey, Little League Baseball needs some umpires, and we got an 8 o'clock Legion game, so you need to be back. And they start at 6 and 7. We play at 8, so we had to go umpire down in the Cottonwood Flats, some T-ball. And boy, I was the most animated umpire there was. And then it clicked. It stood there, and then high school baseball turned into American Legion World Series or state tournaments, and then OSSAA state tournaments. It was fun. Got out, kids started playing more baseball, so I had to leave that. But that also helped me with my broadcasting career, because I know what those guys go through week in and week out. Because when they miss calls and all the fans and coaches are upset, rightfully so, but I guarantee you that official is way more upset and have a hard time. There's a few nights that I went to bed trying to go to sleep, and I couldn't get it out of my mind that I missed that call. And so, but yeah, that has helped me with the broadcast world too, just because I've been there in their shoes.
I said fair to middle of the road, but in truthfulness, full disclosure, he was one of the best. When he hung it up, he was one of the best baseball officials in baseball umpires in high school baseball in the state.
Well, I want to tell a story on that. When you said fair to middle of the road, that's what I was going to jump in. I used to do a sports talk high school sports show on the Sports Animal with Brian Ayler, who was the head baseball coach at Norman North, and Brian's a friend. I covered him in high school, then at Oklahoma State, and he got drafted, I believe, with the Yankees and was in the minor leagues with them. Anyway, I can say this because I'm friends with Brian, but Brian doesn't like anything. Every year he would say, "Oh, my team's awful."
I might know Brian and can attest to that as well.
Yeah. Every year it's, "Oh, my baseball team's awful," and every year it's. He didn't like his dog, he didn't like his wife, he didn't like his baseball team, didn't like his kids. I mean, just didn't like anything. And one day we walk into the radio show, and he said, "What do we have on today? Well, who are we going to have on?" And so I named off our guest, and I said, "And Chris Evans." I said, "He's from Guthrie," and he said, "What's Chris going to be on for?" And I said, "Well, he's from Guthrie and does some Guthrie high school sports, and they've got a big game coming up." So he goes, "Well, Chris is the best high school baseball umpire in the state." And it just shocked me because he never said anything that he liked anybody or anything. And I said, "What?" And he said, "Chris is the best high school baseball umpire in the state."
So really, he dislikes Chris the least.
The least, right? That makes more sense. Yeah,
maybe that's it. But I said, and so I asked him. I said, "Well, why is that?
Yeah.
Why is he the best?" And he said, he handles the game. Mm-hmm. He can control the coaches. He said, "I can go up and yell at him, and it's done with him." Said he forgets it and he moves on to the next play. He said he handles the game, he handles the fans, he handles the kids, he handles the coaches, he handles everything with the same attitude and the same demeanor. Mm-hmm. And he said he's absolutely the best. And so when Coach Ayler said that, then I knew that he was really good.
And one thing, and you guys do this well. With that being said, one thing that helped me with officiating is you got to look good, you got to look the part, but also you got to be approachable, and that goes a long way in life as well because there are going to be those situations. You guys know that very well, but approachable, hearing other people's complaints or their side of the thing, and you go like, "Brian, I understand it was close, man. I hope I got it right, but I was in the right position. I hustled up the line. I was there. I would probably call him out right now." But if I missed it, I would tell you. But I think I got it right. Well, and that was before a lot of streaming everywhere. So nowadays you better be right because streaming's going to catch you.
You're analyzed by somebody with their phone in the stands while the game's going on. You know, Chris, you mentioned that broadcasting, that the umpiring has made you better in broadcasting. You know, I officiated basketball before I coached it. And I think it made me a better coach, too, because you understand where they're supposed to be, and if they're in position, you understand what they're going through. You get to a point where when somebody says, when an official tells you, "I missed it," you know, that was the quickest way to shut me up as a coach. Is if somebody said, "I missed it, coach." Okay, because and I remember when I was coaching and my players would get frustrated about the officials and things like that, and I would remind them, this is a game that is played by humans, it's coached by humans, and it's officiated by humans, and don't be shocked when they act human.
Yeah,
and if you make them mad, they may retaliate the next play down. And so don't make them mad.
And my coaching on a very small level, YMCA basketball, is the 10, 12-year-olds, they always see the NBA guys going after officials. I'm like, "Listen, Lance Evans."
Poor Lance.
When you set that pick, did you roll? So do we want to blow that up in front of everybody? Like, you didn't roll on the pick and roll? I mean, we can go, if you want to nitpick the officials, we can nitpick your play as well. So, it's a human element.
And you wouldn't, if you hadn't done that yourself, you wouldn't take that into your instruction.
Yeah, exactly. Because been there, done that. Grown up with coaches, you know how they are. Grown up with officials, you know that. You know how fans react as well. So I'm pretty easy going at the ball field. So when I'm out in the outfield, behind the outfield wall, then I need to be alone because there's some things that I want to say, but no one needs to hear that or wants to hear that.
Yeah, and I think that's an element that people that people miss sometimes, and I think that has made it harder to have good quality officials. You know, we've had Grant Gower and David Jackson on here and talking about recruiting quality officials for high school sports and what a crisis that is. And I think that's a continual problem that we've got to work on. And it's like a lot of things in life right now. Civility seems like it has gone out the window at times. And
on our broadcast, we have multiple angles. We can go frame by frame and look at that. And there's sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, officials will miss calls and they're more upset than anybody. But when they get it right, and there's 50,000 people, I can imagine like an OSU game, someone booing you for something you did right. And you just can't go back on social media. I got you. You can't do that. These officials. I tell you, they work so hard. And what we see is on Friday nights or on the hardwood on Tuesdays and Fridays. But all the off-season work they have to do, and they have to know all the rules, the casebook, every weird scenario that are out there. And there's a bunch of them out there. But to administer the rules is hard. And really, administering the rules is one of the most important things, because everyone knows if it's out of bounds, holding. But when there's two fouls, one was a spot, one was before the whistle, one was after the whistle, and those guys do a great job doing their work.
Yeah, and that's something that kind of rolls us into, and Van Shea, how long have you been with the OSSAA now?
This is my 10th year.
Okay, I knew it'd been a while. So that's right. You kind of came on about the same time I came on as a board member. So it's been and talk a little bit about what you do for the organization, and then I want to get into a little bit of high school sports.
Well, it changes weekly. Yeah. I'm supposed to be. When it first started, it was one job description, then it kind of just changed over time. Now, my biggest assignments are helping with state tournaments and state championships and helping with the media when they need something at state championships with our media passes. I think we've given out over 600 media passes this year to radio station, and it's just radio stations, TV stations, newspapers, magazines, and a few websites that cover high school sports on a regular basis. So dealing with those, I help with the ticketing. We've tried to go more digital ticketing now, and so I help schools get set up with that. We give out over 30,000 complimentary passes to schools, for coaches, administrators. It's to the point now where we give them to the schools, they give them to who they want. So they can give them to whoever they want. We give out retired administrators, retired officials, retired coaches can purchase passes for $20 for the school year, which is a pretty good deal.
Great deal.
Yeah, for $20 you can go to unlimited games, regular season and playoffs. So I help with all that, but it changes daily. So if the chairperson needs help with something, then I'm doing that. I update the website all the time, and I've gotten 2 emails since I left work today that stuff needs to go up on the website. So I couldn't figure out a website. I couldn't design a website. I couldn't tell you why stuff goes where. I know nothing about that. But we had an IT guy, Chris Wolfong, who's fantastic, and he still helps us even though he's moved on and works at a public school now. But Chris taught me just enough how to update the website so I can do that, and just whatever they need. It kind of changes daily at the association.
So let's talk a little bit about high school sports. Now, Van Shea, I know you, for years you covered high school sports, both with KFOR and then with your own show. Chris, you've been doing this for quite a while now on covering high school sports. You guys kind of give a state of high school sports in your opinion in Oklahoma right now.
The passion's still there. It's still great to go out to, with my new role with the network, I've been able to go out. I was at cheerleading last week and see that, and those athletes and those cool mascots. Cheer is all about those mascots. I love taking pictures. The Chick Shea Chick won the in the McAllister Buffalo. Those were the 2 really good ones. There's a lot of stuff off the field that the OSSAA is dealing with. With transfers. Social media. Carl Albert kids are talking to Guthrie kids, which is a great thing. It's kind of an NBA thing. Everyone kind of knows everybody now. But there's some things that are changing with high school athletics. You got kids moving to schools solely because of sports. And you grow up with your friends through Little League football and junior high football, and then they go off to somewhere else. And so that's one thing that's I think has changed, that where you're like, how are we going to figure this out here? But when you're out there, it's still, the other thing, facilities. The facilities at all these athletic places are just tremendous. You go to these gyms, and you can be at Lomega, you can be at Skiatook. Of course, we know about Union and all these other great big places, but Okarche, Coyle, all these great facilities. That has changed, and I see a lot more pride, there's always been pride in it, but now you see that in facilities. That's one of the biggest things, I think, going across the state, is seeing all these great facilities. And Guthrie, it's not a new building, but the upgrades there with the lighting, the scoreboard, the chairs, the floor, everything has changed. So maybe shot clocks on top of scoreboards one day too, but baskets. But that's another change. We'll get Dr. Simpson on board with that here soon one day. But that's. But it's still the passion there. The victory and the rivals are still there, and I love it.
There's nothing like high school sports. I mean, it's still. I loved when I was at Channel 4. I loved high school. I loved college. I loved covering pro stuff. We got to travel with the Dallas Cowboys when Barry Switzer was there, and man, it was cool. All of it was really cool. But high school, it was still pure. It was still fun. You're playing for a purpose. I love when I hear stories of pro athletes where they come back and tell stories of their high school days.
Yep.
And how much fun they had. I remember when, and I've probably told this story before, but when Matt Holliday had his jersey retired at Stillwater, he came back and they did it at a basketball game, retired his, I can't even remember, I think it was his football jersey, but maybe it was his baseball.
Baseball
Was
jersey.
it baseball?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So his baseball jersey.
Simpson organized that.
Okay.
I was the AD
Well,
there at the time.
And they beat Guthrie that night.
And we
too.
were playing Guthrie.
Okay. Yeah, they were. I do remember that. Well, but one of the things I asked Matt when we went into the interview was about his high school days and what he remembers and what if he has any regrets about his high school days. And he said his biggest regret in high school was that he did not play basketball his senior year. He said, I wasn't very good. I came off the bench. And he said, but I had a long football season, and I was beat up, and I wanted to make sure I was ready for baseball. And so I said, I'm not going to play basketball my senior year. He said, man, that was the worst decision I made. He said, I didn't get those bus rides. I didn't get to be with my buddies. I didn't get to compete with them. He said, I was going to be fine for baseball by the time it came around. Said, I would have been healed up and felt okay. But he said that was one of my biggest regrets of high school. And I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I see kids that play on. I played American Legion baseball in Enid. Loved it. Loved every second of it. But I wasn't playing for my hometown.
Yeah.
I wasn't playing for Pond Creek. And I wanted to win just as bad in those games as I did in my high school games. But, you win an American Legion state championship. I mean, it's cool, and there's people in Enid that love it. And Enid's a big baseball town and used to be a big American Legion town. And it was fantastic. But it's just a little different. You go back to Enid, and a few people know you won, a few people don't. And you go back to Pond Creek after winning a state championship, and that's all they're talking about. Yeah. Everybody in town. And it's we always had this discussion too, that when your athletics are going well in a small town, it seems like everything goes well in the small town. You have less problems in the school system, you have less problems downtown, you have the economy's better, it seems like. I mean, just everything goes better when one of your sports teams is doing well.
And I think we've seen that in Guthrie this fall. Yeah. I mean, my gosh, we've had,
just the morale and everything.
The softball team finished runner-up, the girls cross-country finished runner-up, football team's ranked third in the state and had it rolling and had some great games. And it has snowballed in our community. And I think it's been a lot of fun. And we're still a small town. We may be a 5A high school. We're still a small town, Chris.
Yeah, one of the cool thing about talking about high school sports, I love watching Sunday Night Football, and they have the lower graphics, and they have the players introducing themselves, and they'll say, Chris Evans, instead of saying the U or Clemson, they'll give their high school. And I said, man, if I ever made it to the pros that way, I'd be Chris Evans, Guthrie High School. I could be a 5-time All-American at Miami or Alabama. But when they go back to their high school, because everyone knows where Kyler Murray and Zach Robson, they know where they went to college. But when they put their high school out there, that's big time.
Yeah. Van Shea, you were talking about the Matt Holliday ceremony that night, and I still remember that press conference. I remember when he said that, and obviously I was in the room as well, and it was such a fun night. But knowing Matt really his whole life and watching him grow up, so he upon reflection realized that he missed out on an opportunity to compete, and he also realized that winter season where he wasn't competing, that time that he spent in the batting cage probably didn't make that much difference on getting him to the majors any quicker.
Yeah. Well, and I'm guilty of it as a parent. When my son's team's not playing baseball in the summer on a weekend, and he says, hey, can we call so-and-so and see if they need an extra player? Well, we do it.
Yeah.
We call because he wants to play, and we go play on a different team.
Yep.
And, and I know it's not all about winning and losing, but when you play so many games and you get beat, it just doesn't mean that much anymore.
Yeah.
You get beat and you just move on. Where it used to be you had 12 games in the summer, and every game meant a lot, when you were that age, and you wanted to win every one of them. A quick story. A couple years ago, and I try to not coach any of my kids' teams. I've gotten roped into a couple of school teams this year because they weren't going to have them if I wasn't coaching. But we were playing baseball a couple years ago, and this team beat our team in a game, and one of the coaches walked over afterwards and said, man, our kids just aren't very tough. So they're just not very tough. And I said, no, they're not. And he said, well, yeah, they're just a bunch of Edmond kids and just not very tough. And I said, well, the other team was from Edmond too. But I said, let me give you an example. I said, you see that first baseman for the other team? I said, his name's Crew Province, and his dad Cole was an All-American wrestler at UCO, a national champion wrestler at UCO.
Deer Creek kid.
And a Deer Creek kid, but a fantastic athlete and a national champion wrestler and an All-American wrestler. I said, see that third baseman for our team? I said, his name's Turner Ivan. I said, his dad hired a guy this weekend to pull weeds out of his flower garden. I said, so there's the difference of why one team's pretty tough and the other team may not be that
I've seen
tough.
some Pond Creek photos. I saw a pretty tough number one.
Well, maybe 100 years ago.
Yeah. They were black and white, but
they were. But I said, there's the difference, sometimes. And man, I spoil my kids. I do. I spoil them, but then I also want to be tough on them too.
Yeah.
When it's time to be tough, and I mean, I give them every advantage that I'm capable of giving them. But I also, when you were talking about officials, my dad officiated high school basketball for 25 years, and I remember the site. It was 5th grade at Medford. We were playing Kiowa, Kansas in a tournament, and the referee made some call. Don't even know what it was, but obviously I knew, as a 5th grader, I knew more than the official. Of course. And so I made some look at him or something. I don't know what I did.
Were you on the bench?
No, I was playing.
You're playing. Okay.
Game.
All right.
And I was playing, and I did not agree with this call, and I made it known somehow. And when I walked in the door at home, when I got home, my dad was waiting there. And long story short, I never made a facial gesture again to an official. I tossed the ball to him. I never did anything. My dad made it clear that you never say anything or show any emotion or be upset with an official ever. And he made it clear. And my dad didn't say much.
Yeah.
He never he complimented very little. He was always very proud of me, but he didn't say a lot. He was at every game. He never showed up at a practice, but he was at every game. He might get off the combine and take the back roads to Enid, but he would show up when I came to bat, first batter in the bottom of the first inning in a Legion game. Still had on his work clothes and dirty and dusty, but he never missed anything. But he also made it clear that we will not ever show any emotion or criticize or be upset with any call. And I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
But I learned young.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that I always try to pass on to my kids,
And
too.
you remember that from 5th grade.
Oh, I remember it well.
Yeah.
I remember.
Well, those lessons that are learned like that, they stick with you without a doubt. And I think that's powerful, because so much of that is lost today, I think, by and large. And I don't want to get on a soapbox, but ESPN has been great for college sports. It's been great for sports in general. But people see how others act, and they think they should act that way at every level.
Yeah, especially in basketball, NBA, when they sit there and complain to NBA officials all the time, it drives me crazy. Why did the NBA allow that? And so then you get a college kid and a high school kid, and oh no, we don't do it that way. But some kids, some coaches, with basketball, you got high school coach, you got AU coach, and you have to bring them in. Then they don't like being structured, and so it's we talk about tough jobs on officials, tough job on coaches as well, just because of what they see on TV, and it just dwindles down.
Yeah, it's gotten. Mr. Jackson and I were having David Jackson, the head of the OSSAA. He and I were having breakfast the other day, and he's just a little bit older than me, but not much. And I kind of turned to him and I said, David, when did we become the grumpy old men? He said, I don't really know.
Yeah. I'm there.
But
I can feel myself getting there. Well, it's what
Chris, you're a little younger than Van Shea.
But I'm getting to the point. Go, man. When his dad played. Oh, wait a minute. That's not good. It's starting to creep in a little bit. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about. We touched a little bit on the OSSAA, but the NFHS network and what that all. Chris, you may want to kind of explain the role that you play for the OSSAA. But also the NFHS network and streaming in general now, and how that is so different than even 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, I think the NFHS network works with the OSSAA, and I'm contracted with the NFHS network, so I'm with them, and obviously get feedback from both sides. They're based out of the NFHS headquartered in Indianapolis, NFHS network in Atlanta, but the production side, Atlanta, but they overlook almost, I think, 46 out of 51 states, something 46, 47, somewhere in that area, and the network has been a positive point because of all the other sports included. Everyone knows about football, everyone knows about basketball, everyone knows about baseball, but state cheer. All the events that the debates, the one at Rose Bowl, cross country, academic bowl. So stuff like that gets in years past. Nothing against them, because I remember watching state championships all the time. I grew up watching. I loved them.
Cox and Channel 9,
all those,
Griffin and all that stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And they had all the great Jinx Unions game, but I never got to see Washington or Wagner. I never got to see Colcord. I never got to see Fairview. And we didn't see those. So that's one of the great things about the network is they encompass all the sports at all the levels. Cheerleading from Crescent to Owasso, swimming. We would have never saw swimming, and so that's the streaming. The day and age has also helped that as well. But they have made a lot of awareness to other sports, and so it's kind of one spot, kind of one location with the network. If it's a state championship, you're probably going to find it there. So it's been great there. Of course, there's been some up and down with technology and some other stuff that out of people's control, but. It's always important to try to give everyone out there the opportunity to have the same spotlight now. When it used not to be that way.
Yeah.
I still remember you'd turn on the radio, and you'd scroll through the AM dial on the way back from one game, trying to get the scores from all the others, or see if a game was still being played, and you'd listen to some guy that looks like he just pulled up in a dirty old pickup and gotten on a microphone, and he's telling you what it's like in his hometown for the football game. And he's probably sitting in a press box that it's barely a roof over him, and talking through a phone line.
Yeah, I haven't been on the radio. We've been without radio for 2 years. It's very weird. Still is, because it was always radio there. But, with streaming today, you can watch games from all across the state. And you're like, well, I've never been to, Salisol's football field. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never been to Jay. Actually, I have been to Jay, but you see their football. You get to see all the different arenas and baseball fields. So that's the other great thing about streaming, is you get to see more of what is out there in the state of Oklahoma.
Man, Shea, talk about what the streaming from your perspective has changed with regard to how the OSSAA looks at this as well, and trying to bring more events to people.
When I started, streaming was just kind of getting started.
Yeah.
When I started the OSSAA, and I remember I wasn't very high on it at all. I mean, I just thought this isn't going to work. I didn't know if it was going to work. I just didn't like the idea of it. It didn't sound. I guess I didn't know enough about it, and I still don't.
Is this when you were becoming a grumpy old man?
Well, yeah,
Okay.
no, I was already there. I was there, but I just didn't really understand it, and I remember we'd get a few requests to stream, and in our morning meeting, I don't know if it was yesterday or Tuesday, but when they came around to me and they said, okay, we good on live streaming, we good on tickets, we good on sites, everything good, and I said, yeah, on the live streaming, there are 46 of the 48 games are being streamed this week in the football playoffs, and there was 20 some of them maybe that had more than one stream that were covering the game. So either, both teams, or a radio station from both places, or a student group, or something that was covering it. So, I mean, there's just a lot of options these days. And, I mean, when Chris was talking about the best part to me is the other sports other than football and basketball. When you get the baseballs and the fast pitch and the slow pitch and the cross country and the academic bowl, and when the swimmings and the wrestling and that's the best part to me. I mean, I was talking with one of the guys in another state that does the same job that I do, and they were all excited that they were going to stream the cross country this year. For the first time, they were streaming the cross country state championship. So I clicked on it to watch to see what they did, and I've seen Chris's streams before of cross country that are just fantastic. And so this one, they ended up, it looked like in a rodeo arena. And it was pretty cool. I mean, because you had a ton of seats for everybody to sit there and watch where they come in. But their stream was there was where the finish line was, there was a stage behind it, and they had one camera pointed towards the gate of the rodeo arena. So you saw, if they run 3.2 miles or whatever it is, you saw 40 yards. And that was the first time you saw the kids, and that was when they came around a corner and came in. But it was a stream. You got to, that something is better than nothing.
You got to see someone finish.
You got to see every kid finish.
Yep.
You got to see the winner come in. And it would, the camera never moved or anything, but it was something, and they were proud of it, and they should be, because they had not done it before. And I'm sure it'll get better, but that just we get spoiled, I think, in Oklahoma with all the events that get covered at the state level, and then we get more spoiled because of who's doing it. When Chris shows up, I mean, there's going to be there could be problems at any event.
Yeah.
I watched a college football game on ESPN last night, and for I don't know how long, there was a thing on the screen that said audio difficulties, and there was no audio at all.
As a small guy, it's like, it happens to the big guys too.
ESPN on a nationally televised game, and there was no audio whatsoever. I mean, I was mad at the kids. I thought one of them sat on the remote, and I didn't have my audio, and and then this comes up on the screen. So there's going to be problems.
Yeah.
And I've told people, I said, we may have a problem at basketball state tournament or football state final or whatever, but it's not going to be because of lack of effort and lack of planning and lack of knowledge. It's not going to be because of any of that. It's going to be because of bad luck.
And nobody's out there going, hey, I'm going to screw up this broadcast today so that I can get everybody mad at us.
And that's from the state championship level to a first game of the year at a small Class B school.
Yeah.
You know, no one's trying to mess something up.
No, in fact, usually that person on the other side is really stressed out because
Yeah.
they know up in Guyman, Oklahoma, is watching the stream because they can't get to Oklahoma City, and they're probably paid a fee to watch that, and you know that, and you're trying to put on the best production you can, and there's a lot. I mean, you got to have a backup you got to have a backup computer, you got to have a backup hotspot, you got to have all these backups in case something like that happens, and if the HDMI cable goes down. I mean, we talk about officiating, want to get everything right. As a production that people are counting on, thousands of people across the state are counting on, in the biggest game of the entire year for that school, a school that has been there 10 years in a row, or a team that hadn't been there ever.
Yeah.
It's a big deal, and there's a lot of pressure. People don't realize that, but there's a lot of pressure to get it done. Not only stay on the air, but also give them the best that you can. The players are giving the best, the coaches are giving best, the OSSAA is giving their best, so the production has to give their best as well. And so there's some pressure with that. You wouldn't think so. And so when everything comes together, including technology, it's very rewarding. The final result.
And like I said last night, that wasn't an ESPN Plus. It was ESPN2.
Yeah.
It was on TV, and Channel 9's one of the best TV stations, not in just Oklahoma, but you go around the region, and they're fantastic. And they move into a new studio. They had problems for weeks.
And how many times did they rehearse?
Yeah.
They didn't just go, let's try this.
Those people are good. It's not rookies that are there doing it. They're
with the best technology.
With the best technology. Their equipment's not free.
No.
They pay pretty pennies for it. And so it's going to happen.
Dean Blevins just sitting there like,
I remember that.
It's going to happen. It does, and it's no one wants it.
But it's a lot like officiating. When the game's over with and nobody knows who the official was, it went well.
Yeah.
And if nobody says anything about the broadcast, they're talking about the game itself, it went well.
Yeah.
But you gave me an idea here with what you just said a minute ago, because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, if Edmond does a great job with cross country, and when they host our state cross country meet, it's a tremendous facility and everything's there. But if they ever decide that they don't want to host it again, we've got the Lazy E.
Yeah,
and we could run them rodeo.
Yes.
Well, you might want to call the Lazy.
Yeah, well,
he's got them on speed dial. Trust me.
They know my name.
We may be looking.
Well, if we can get a drone, at the cross country, we can get even more.
Well, no, Coach Snyder and
they are so good.
And Coach. I can't think now, of course, but they're fantastic.
Tom and all those guys, and Mike Nunley and
they're
those
fantastic.
guys. Yeah, and
there's not an event we have where the people care about it more or work harder.
And
we've got some fantastic
It's
ones.
so convenient because you've got all the parking. I mean, parking's tight, but it's going to be tight because you've got a lot of people there. But you've got the stadium right there for the ceremony. You've got the finish line right by the stadium. You've got the PA. You've got the lights. You've got a good course. And
you also got the space for all the teams to spread out.
Yes,
in between
with
these
the
long
camps.
races.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
and like I said, they have done. They're as good as it gets.
Really is.
And half of it is they want the event.
Yeah.
A lot of times people will say, we'll host for you, and they really don't want to, and they're just doing it to be nice.
Yeah, they're not just opening the gates and going, here, you guys have fun.
But also what happens when you've done it for so many years, you need a break, and they get tired. And I think they're kind of getting to the end of what they want to host it, and I hope they host it for another 50 years.
Yeah.
But I also understand that you've done it for so long, and you probably do need a break at some point.
And
they're
the way
fantastic.
those playoffs events happen, that's at a really busy time of the school year.
Yeah, and your same people have done
because you're at
weeks of football.
You're at the end of football. You're kind of at the end of softball, and you're at the end of volleyball, and you want to take a deep breath.
And basketball practices have started and scrimmages but they're as good as it gets.
They're big time.
Yeah. So we're right in the middle of football playoffs. Anything you guys see on the horizon of surprises up to this point? Obviously, the first round of the playoffs is over with, and generally with the first round, the 6A schools have the bye for the higher seeded teams, and the others it's ones versus fours in most cases, then twos versus threes. Anything you see on the horizon as a surprise? Shocker, or is it pretty much gone as scripted so far?
Yeah, I think so far scripted. I think Frederick, the 4 seed, almost beat Kingston, the 1 seed, in 2A football. Alva goes all the way to Chandler and upset there. And that's on the one side of the bracket. But I think for the most part, everything played out as it has in all the classes. I'm so happy for Pump City West. They made the playoffs this year. Ponca City's made the playoffs 2 years in a row. And now they're still playing football. Schools that are starting to see success. 6A 2, Division 2 has really brought on a really fun, Choctaw, Stillwater, Muskogee, Sand Springs, Bartlesville, teams that really never had the chance to compete against Jenks Union, all those big schools. So that has brought more competition for schools that really hadn't been there before. Of course, we're adding more classes next year, but 6A2 has been great. There's a lot of people skeptical about that, but I think now looking back on it, I think it started in 2014 or somewhere in that range of 6A2, and I think it's been a great success.
Count me as a skeptic on that when it was put in. Although I'll say, 12 years of my career was at 2 different school districts that are now in 6A2 and having more success than they ever could when it was just one class. I can remember some really good teams that we had at Stillwater when I was athletic director, both with Kirk Frederick as head coach and Dr. DeFee, where we were really good. Yeah. And we knew we had no chance to win the state championship. We were just hoping to, and it seemed like we always in the second round would catch Jenks. And what I learned about the 6A when it was all together is the depth of those much larger high schools played a huge role later in the season because, football is a collision sport. Your injuries are inevitable. But if you're pulling from a much larger pool of students, your twos are better than the twos at a school that's pulling from half that size. Yeah. And so as the year went on and injuries would happen, the depth that those schools had propelled them further in the playoffs. And that's why you saw such a long, that's really still continuing, but such a long domination of the east side, in my opinion. And at that time, Mustang and Yukon were not the mega high schools that they are now, but Broken Arrow was a mega high school when I was in high school. And Union and Jenks and now OSSAA, with them not splitting, they had that depth and they had that success.
And that's another thing this year. Norman North and Norman High School both hosted first-round playoff games and both won. And it's the first time they're in the second round together since 2012, and the 2 teams from the same district. Edmond Memorial did not make the playoffs, but Edmond North and Edmond Santa Fe did, where, 2 or 3 schools in one district still having good teams against those mega schools that you talked about. And you talk about, the classifications with adding 6A2. I get to, I'm an ADM nerd. Because it's always fun to watch Newcastle. Oh, they're only 2 or 3 spots away from 5A. Yeah. Oh, Pump City West is coming down. You get different matchups. You see games that you never seen before. Putnam City West and Booker T. Washington playing in a playoff game. Well, that's pretty cool. That's different. That's different. Tuttle or Piedmont's probably the best example. Oh, they're in 6A wrestling, but 5A softball. It matches up different, and so I love seeing schools come down and go up just because it gives it more parity, something new and fresh. Well, I think that's a cool thing with the ADM that comes out every year.
Yeah. Van Shea, your thoughts on the playoffs?
The 6A2 stuff, you look at a school like Choctaw, who may not have had much success at times in 6A, and then you develop 6A2, it comes around, and they have some success. And I just think of the number of kids who are out for football now, who may not have been if it was 6A1 and Choctaw was going 2-8 or 3-7, and Choctaw may have been a lot better than that. I don't know, but I don't know where they would have been without 6A2. But now you have kids going out, they're getting coached by coaches, they're getting, they're making memories, they're on those bus rides, they're going to practices, they're playing in games, they're getting in the playoffs. Maybe making better grades because they're more focused, and if they weren't out for football, where would they be going when at 3 o'clock when school's out, or 4 o'clock, or 3:30, or whatever? What would they be doing for those next 2.5 hours? So I think it's great. It's given Choctaw's better, Sand Springs is better, Sapulpa's better, Ponca City, like you said, is in the playoffs. All three Putnam cities made the playoffs. Even it's when you've taken some of those teams down to 6A2, even the Enid and 6A1 have gotten into the playoffs. And Enid won a playoff game last year and got in the playoffs again this year. So the numbers are up at Enid in different places.
And I think it helps with coaching as well. I mean, if you go back to the original 6A, and I won't name a school, but if you're a coach, why would I go to a smaller 6A school when I would never have a chance? I want to be an up-and-coming coach. Why would I want to go in that? It's a no-win situation at this X school. Well, now, no matter what class you're in, if you feel like put it all together, you feel like you can make a difference as far as wins and losses. You can always make a difference in kids' lives. But wins and losses, you feel like I can go in there, if I stick to what I know and improve, I can be a championship coach.
If you want to find out what the public perception is of your football program and you're the athletic director, run a coaching search.
Yeah.
And you'll find out. You will find out quickly if the public perceives outside of your community that you can be successful or not.
Yeah,
that's huge, because when I go around the state and I say I'm from Guthrie, I always want to hear what other people from Poto thinks of Guthrie. Do they think of downtown buildings? Do they think of Guthrie football? Do they think First Capital? What do they think of?
When I ran 2 coaching searches at Stillwater, when Dr. DeFee retired, and then when Kirk Frederick went to OSSAA before he went to Union, and ran 2 in Ponca City in 4 years. It was vastly different in both places. And that was the public perception outside of the community of how successful you can be. And it's sobering beyond belief when you do that. It can be a gut punch to you. If you want to convince your community that you can be successful, and the perception you can't generate a quality coaching pool of applicants to interview. And
Guthrie's a perfect example. 2000 on. Now I would think there's probably going to be a few more interest. We've
proven that you can have sustained success in this community in football, and I don't think that was always present.
No,
and it's kind of like what I told when we hired Kirk Frederick in Stillwater. And I think that's true historically of Guthrie prior to us breaking down the door and winning the state championships. And I said this about Stillwater, there have been a lot of high-quality, good football coaches that had gone through Stillwater and couldn't win. Rod Warner struggled at Stillwater, his hometown, and won how many state championships at Heritage Hall. Tommy Knowles struggled at Stillwater and won a state championship at Moore. There are a lot of people that went through that program and went on to have great success somewhere else. But those kinds of things, and we can go back in the history books of Guthrie and see some of that as well. And so perception. It's not as historical as it used to be. It's more of an immediate last few years what people remember now.
Now the number one ranked Pioneers are trying to go back-to-back state champions.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's the thing I wrote down. I put Bixby, Stillwater, and Carl Albert. The championships. The playoffs are the playoffs, but the championships go through those three places for the three largest classifications, in my opinion, because of the success of all three of those programs.
It always go back and forth, like Fairview. They won last year's state championship in Class A. That's awesome. Fairview, when Guthrie had never won anything. We're looking for a winning season. Then we're winning state championships. There's going to be the Carl Alberts and the Adas and the Heritage Halls. But I get really excited for like Fairview, and Concord, Muskogee. They've had success. But I always like those, of course, in 5A, you got Carl Albert who wins it routinely. But it's always, Claremore's better this year. Sapulpa moved down to 5A. That's always they're better. So I always like those towns that haven't had a whole lot. I guess maybe being from Guthrie, I know what they've been through and what it's like to finally win a state championship. Man, that's one of the coolest feelings. And so I always kind of root for the Fairviews and.
Well, and that's we send out stuff several weeks early to see who will be available to host semifinals in the playoffs in football because they're at neutral sites. And so I did hear that one of the places sent back, and it was a smaller school, and they said we would be a good matchup if this happens and this happens. But anyway, they brought up Drumright, who had struggled for a couple of years in football, and they're undefeated this year and pretty good. And they said, we want Drumright here. If it works out, we want them here. Said because they're going to bring everybody in the town. Said that can you imagine what the community of Drumright's doing right now? After struggling for several years in football, and I don't mean I just mean over time. But now with an undefeated team going into the second round of the playoffs, I bet that's a fun place to live right now.
The journey is a lot more fun than the destination.
Yeah,
it really is.
It's just. All right, let's talk. Before we wrap this up, I want to talk a little bit about the future. What do you guys see in the future in high school sports in the state?
Man.
See, this is what I like because, both of you guys have had to interview me before.
Yeah.
And now I get to ask the questions. That's why I love having you guys on.
Like I said earlier, high school sports I had a really good experience in high school, growing up in a small town and high school sports and in every sport. We had some seasons we weren't very good, and we had other seasons that we were pretty good. But my high school experience was just fantastic. And I hope that it continues that way. I hope that the future, I read a thing in the NFHS magazine the other day, and they were talking about sportsmanship and how it's kind of gone south, and they were saying, what's the main cause of that? And they gave the options were coaches, parents, fans, something else, and kids. And kids was the bottom one. Yeah. The reason of bad sportsmanship was the kids was the lowest percentage, and so I'm becoming a sports parent now with my kids getting older, and I hope I get better at being a sports parent, and I hope I'm good with that.
It's different when it's your own child.
It's different.
Yeah.
It's different, but and I get it. It's you spend time and you spend money and you spend efforts and you want everything to go well, but I hope the sportsmanship, and I think it's we kind of went through a bad spot, and I think it's kind of getting better, the sportsmanship. I hope it continues to get better, but I hope the high school sports stays pure. With NIL now and with transfers, and it's kind of going down a road that as an old man, a grumpy old man, that I don't like a lot of it, but it is what it is. But I hope high school sports stays pure. I hope it stays fun for the kids. I hope kids continue to go out for their local school teams, and I'm saying sports. I hope they continue to go out and be a part of FFA and be a part of the band and be a part of 4-H and be a part of one-act play and esports. I mean, I was in all that except esports. There was no such thing, but I mean, I did it all, and I couldn't sing a lick, but I was in the choir and I went to Tri-State every year, and I could not sing at all, but I enjoyed it, and I knew where the cute girls were, so I was in vocal music. But
I sang solos at Tri-State myself. I know that a lot of people will not believe that, but having a well-rounded experience is so important, because growing up, you don't know what your passion is going to be, and finding that is so important for the kids to have success.
Yeah. I don't know if technology plays a role in everything. So I don't know how much more technology. There's something out there. I mean, streaming was the answer. Technology. Now, what's the next step on that with technology with high school sports?
Is this where you bring up shot clocks?
I think that's real close. We're just a couple of yes votes away on that one, but.
I'm term limited on the OSSAA
that's right.
board.
So like North Rock Creek, how many more North Rock Creeks? They just came on board. I think this is their 5th year playing high school sports. They made the playoffs for the first time. They got a good cheer team, by the way, too. But is OWASO going to split into 3 schools? Is Broken Arrow going to be in 4? That's the only thing moving forward that I can think of that would be changed outside of what Van Shea shared. So.
One thing that and Van Shea, this will hit home with you a lot, but the rural migration of population to larger communities and the shrinking population of rural Oklahoma, I see that more and more as affecting sports, because as a board member, we get those requests for a co-op where several schools will try to go together so that they can compete, because they just don't have enough kids anymore. I would have never thought that Hollis, Oklahoma would be playing 8-man football. I would have never thought O'Keene would be playing 8-man football, because I remember my days at Apache where we would catch the Whippets in the playoffs in 11-man and get beat or have a whale of a ball game with them. And Sealing, with all of the success that they've had in high school football through the years with Bruce Hendrickson and all of that legacy, and they're playing 8-man football. That's something that I hate to see. Most of my career has been spent at large schools, but some of it's been spent at small schools too. And I know the value for those kids. You're a prime example of that, of someone that thrived with a lot of opportunity in a smaller high school, but you had those opportunities. And I worry about what that looks like 10 years from now in our state.
Yeah, Boone Apache. You were Apache. Now it's Boone Apache. Yeah.
Well, it was when I was there, but we just called it Apache High School.
I did not know
that. But they have shrunk in size. My time in Blackwell, we were 4A in basketball, and they have dropped dramatically with the ADMs that you follow. There is a migration from rural Oklahoma out.
Mark Rogers was interviewing the Perkins Tryon football coach. The district champions first time since 2011. And Mark asked, so Perkins Tryon, is it still, what's Tryon? He goes, it's really P-Town. We don't have a whole lot from Tryon with us, but we call it P-Town. But that's another example of 2 schools together. Perkins is growing.
Yeah, they're growing like crazy. I mean, a lot of times when I'll go to a ball game in Stillwater, we'll take Highway 33 and drive up that way. And the building that's going on between Perkins and Stillwater, there along Western Road, I mean, there will be a time that you won't see
But it's Oklahoma City to Edmond.
Yeah, it won't be there.
Yeah.
There won't be a rural split there. It will look residential all the way.
And there's some schools, like Ulaga, Talala. I'll use them for example. If they're in the state basketball tournament, I'll go to Van Shea. Like their name's way too long.
Yeah.
Do I use? I don't want to get Perkins try. I want to put Perkins, but I don't want to be not sensitive to Tryon because maybe that's a big part of their life too. And they're like, so what do I do here? I need, and so he'll go ask the school, and they'll say,
and you never know because for years, even because I was there right after the consolidation with Boone and Apache. We just called it Apache High School, but it was Boone Apache Public Schools. Now they're calling it Boone Apache High School, and you just never know what the politics are locally. For
Thomas Fay Custer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's sad to see some of those schools dissolve and not be around anymore. I mean, just recently, a couple years ago, Boynton girls won state, and the school was gone 2 months later. Yeah, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, you look back at, and Tologa still has a school, but you look back at Tologa was in the state baseball finals, like fall and spring every year, and then they would be in state in basketball a couple years, and all the athletes that went through there, and then they don't have enough, for even to play basketball for a couple years, and baseball, and just the numbers. It is sad to see those dry up, and I took my little boy, and we went to a Pond Creek Hunter football game this season, and we drove through Hunter on the way to Pond Creek, and there's just not much in Hunter anymore.
Yeah.
And when I played, we had several contributors. I mean, good players that were from Hunter that made a difference.
Yeah.
And we go through, and there's just not much there anymore, and so it is sad when you go through towns like that and see them dissolve and see that people are leaving.
Yeah, and that's just it's what's going on, and I know that the first time that we got that request from, I think the one that was an aha moment for me as sitting on the board was Hollis, and because they'd had so much success through the years, and Well, anything that you guys, appreciate you guys being on. Anything you guys want to add before we get out of here?
I just want to thank Van Shea. I call him so many times throughout the week. I'm sure he gets tired of me and waiting for the regular season to come back to the next season so we don't talk about the championships. But Van Shea is one of the good guys. And, man, I got a handful of people that really have helped me move along, and he's definitely one of those guys. So, man, I wish I was good with words as he is, but he always makes you feel good when you're around him. So,
can you call my wife?
Yeah, I've tried.
Talk to my wife.
I would echo that, Chris.
Yeah.
Van Shea?
Well, this is just a pretty good room. I mean, I think very highly of both of you, and I've said that multiple times. But no, I appreciate you having. Appreciate you doing this, and I appreciate you having me on. But I think highly of both of you, very much so.
Well, of the people that work to promote high school athletics in our state, I can't think of two people that dedicate more to it than you guys.
And I've learned a lot of that from him. Not only how to do it the right way. Perfect example, Johnson had an interception, not Tim threw an interception, stuff like that. Also, given all the, I remember his show, giving all the cheerleaders and the rodeo guy all the football guy gets it all the time. But I've learned to do that as well because I going to cheer and talking about their cheer team, how passionate they have, an outstanding cheer. I've learned that through him, and then always talking about knowing a little bit about other people's town. Now I don't know the highways like Van Shea and Mark Rogers. They're so good on the highways, go through here, and where to eat at too. But just knowing a little bit about every little town. When you go to somewhere, I'm from whatever town, Shattuck. Oh, the Indians. I mean, state titles. They're like, oh wow, Shattuck. Oh, absolutely. And so that's one of the cool things I've really learned from him. And you go through life, you see people who do what they do really good, and you kind of mimic what they do and put it on yourself, and hopefully.
Well, when you talk about that, it's just for Guthrie's quarterback. For his family, it's a big deal that they're playing in the second round of the football playoffs this week. But you go down the road to Coyle and for their third baseman in fast pitch softball, it's a big deal to her family too.
Yeah.
Whether they win 25 games or win 5, it's a big deal. The high school experience is a great thing, and whether you end your career with a lot of wins or not very many wins, I mean, the journey, like you talked about, is a big deal, and it's a big deal to those families. Yeah. So it's important to make everyone feel important.
Yep. Even that little ball boy on the Class B on the bench, you got to get him on there because he's part of it. The town knows all about him. So
the tears roll faster out of his eyes or her eyes when they get beat than it does maybe the coach or the kids' eyes.
Exactly.
Well, guys, I can't thank you enough for being here with us today. I enjoy working with both of you. I consider it a privilege and something that truly has been a blessing for not only me but for high school kids across the state. So thank you very much for joining us today, and appreciate everyone tuning in, listening, and enjoying the conversation. For Chris Evans and Shea Iven, I'm Mike Simpson. This has been Shock Talk. Thanks again for joining us.